Welcome back to the Brantley Method. I am your host, Justin Brantley. Extremely excited to bring you the Daily Huddle, where each day I'll take a deep dive into grassroots basketball, AAU basketball, just whatever's going on in the landscape. Want to talk about it, want to share what I'm seeing, share what I'm experiencing. And day one, I'm super excited to bring you a breakdown from the Battle Summer Showcase. Amazing event. I was blessed with the opportunity to broadcast the games alongside Rashad Phillips, Michael Hearn for SUV TV. We had some high-level basketball. The event was hosted at Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's. It was from start to finish a top-notch event with some amazing players, some great teams, and we're going to talk about that. For some of you guys who were tuned in live watching the games, you already know what I'm about to talk about. You saw it already. For anybody that missed it, I'm going to make sure to share with you what I saw, but also take your time to go watch those games. SUV TV has them available. Reach out, follow them on social media, subscribe to their YouTube channel. Make sure you're following them because at SUV TV, they're bringing just a different level and a different brand of high-level high school basketball. It's not your normal, Tuesday or Friday night high school basketball that you're going to see in your local hometown. It's constantly the top of the top, the best of the best, competition, rec. I mean, it was just flat out amazing. And without further ado, I'm going to jump into the number one question that I got on social media and from people reaching out to me. Who stood out to me? Who were some of the top players? Who were some of the top teams? Basketball is a team sport, so I'm going to talk about it first from the team side, and then from there we'll dive into things from an individual standouts and the players that caught my eye and that I want to keep my eye on moving forward. So first and foremost, Midwest Basketball Club. I've had the opportunity to watch them and see them play now probably close to 10 times live. They're one of the best grassroots teams and emphasis on team that I've seen ever. And what I mean by that is I've seen great collections of talent. I've seen teams that have 3 and 4, 5 stars on them. I've seen teams that you look down the roster and you say, okay, future NBA player, future NBA player, future NBA player, future NBA player. And that's great. And some of those teams, have been highly successful and won summer championships. What I mean when I say this is one of the best grassroots teams I've ever seen is the level of connectivity that they play with. They share the ball better than anybody I've ever seen. They play for each other. They're taking charges, the energy from first man to last man on the bench. Everybody's engaged. Everybody's locked in. Coach Gabe Cupps, he coaches those guys very, very hard. I had an opportunity to talk to him when we were in Houston covering them for the IMO Classic for Memorial Day. They were getting to shoot around at one of the local parks prior to the game. And it's evident because they knocked down open shots. So you can tell that they're really invested into their success long-term and what they're doing as a program. And I mean, they were just phenomenal. So I have to shout them out as one of the top programs that was there. Another program that stood out to me on both their 15 and their 17U side was Wildcat Select. They played hard. They had some high level players on both of their teams, which we'll talk about. They had some big time wins. Midwest Basketball Club finished the weekend undefeated. Wildcat Select, their only loss was to that Midwest Basketball Club team. It was a close game. It was a tightly contested contest. And I think maybe if SENCIRE Harris, who went down late in that game, if he could have stayed in it, it probably would have went into overtime or possibly gone the other direction. So Wildcat Select is a very, very good team. They're going to be tough to beat here in July as they head on to the 3SSB circuit. All Ohio Red came in. They only played on Sunday. Sunday morning, they had the 10 a.m. game. And if you're like I am and you've watched a lot of AAU and grassroots basketball, those 9 and 10 a.m. games are typically not the games that you really are excited to see because guys are just they're just getting loose, and especially for a team that wasn't already there for the onset of the event. But that's not what happened. All Ohio Red came into that 10 o'clock game and quickly dismantled their opponent, scored 101 points. They were the first game in the event that went over 100. And it was just an amazing kind of, you saw the talent level, you saw the capability of this program. Fell short in the 130 game against Strive for Greatness, but again, playing at 10, short rest, getting right back on the floor at 1:30 against a loaded Strive for Greatness team. Very difficult to do that. I don't care who you are. I don't care who you have on your team. And they just weren't able to pull it out against Strive for Greatness. But the way that they came and showed up and played in that first game, really showed flashes of how special that team can be. And then lastly, I've got to talk about C2K Elite. Coach Quincy Simpson did a phenomenal job with his team. And the reason why I'm shouting out C2K Elite, their 17U team was missing Danny Young, missing a couple of the other key pieces. They came out and took a very tough loss early to Wildcat Select. After playing, they played Midwest Basketball Club, then they turned around and played Wildcat Select. The very next day, they went against Strive for Greatness. And I came into the game thinking, after seeing the way that they played against Midwest Basketball Club and the way that they played against Wildcat Select, I thought it was going to be a tough outing for them. And it wasn't at all. They battled tooth and nail down to the final possession. And it was something that stood out for me. How do you respond from tough losses? And they responded very well from that nearly 40-point loss to Wildcat Select. It came out and played their heart out against that Strive for Greatness team. And I think that that's a testament of the program. That's a testament of Coach Quincy Simpson and what he was able to pull out of his guys, even missing, their number one player and missing some of their key pieces. So I think that, without a doubt, you have to shout out C2K Elite. Their 15U program was very good. There was a lot of great young talent there that I'm looking at and I'm going to keep my eye on as they grow and develop. But you can see that they're a strong program and they'll do well in the years to come. From a standout player standpoint, I got the question a lot, hey, who was the best player there? I probably got that phone call about 10 times on my drive home. And it was so tough to even, touch on or even talk about, one person because there was so much talent. And there were so many guys that stood out to me. These are not in any order. It's not because, hey, I feel like this person's the best or that person's the best. This is just in the order of my notes, in the order of what I was taking down. So we're going to go through them one by one. First and foremost, I'll say, I love to see young guys. It's not so much to me about, where a player is at or where they're ranked at or what they're doing at the end of the journey. I want to kind of watch and track them throughout the course of the journey. And being able to lay eyes on Victorious Miller for the first time live, that was big for me. I've heard a lot about him. I've seen him. Obviously, I grew up listening to his father, Silk the Shocker's music. And I was intrigued. I wanted to see, hey, what level can he play at? Is he really as good as they say he is? Is he a top 10 talent in the class of 2024? I walked away from this event with no question that he is definitely one of the best players in the country in the class of 2024. I inaccurately tabulated his stats yesterday, and I said he averaged 23 points a game, and that was incorrect. It's 28 points per game in the 3 outings. He had 34 points in game 1, 20 points in game 2, and 30 points in game 3. Probably I'd say the most impressive piece of that was he was 31 for 22 from the free throw line in those 3 games. He got to the free throw line. He put the ball on the floor, attacked the basket, and none of the teams that he went against had any answer for him. When you have a player like that who, with the ball in his hands, can get to the free throw line and then can convert those free throw opportunities, it puts you at ease as a coach to know, hey, we're in good hands. I think one of the things that I noticed with Victorious Miller, because of how talented he is, and I see this a lot from young players, he plays a lot with the ball in his hands, which he's capable of doing. But I'd like to see him with a little bit of a better point guard alongside of him. I don't think that he's a true point guard. I think he's a capable point guard, but I really think that he's more of a 2 or a 3. And I'd like to see him continue to develop. He's got great size. He's got great lateral agility. He defends well. He plays with a lot of effort and intensity. I think he's definitely somebody that we're going to be talking about a lot over the years to come, but definitely somebody that stood out quite a bit. To me, if I had to say who was the best player in the event, consistently, it would be SENCIRE Harris. SENCIRE Harris had, a phenomenal game in each of his outings. He played with such intensity, played with, pure heart. Rashad Phillips and I talked about him several times throughout the broadcast. And in the first game, he said, hey, that's Rhode Island Catino Mobley. And we joked about it and we talked about it a little bit, but what SENCIRE was able to bring to the table consistently for Wildcat Select was special. He has such an amazing first step. He scores at all three levels. He plays above the rim. He knocks down outside shots. I mean, he's just a phenomenal player. And on the heels of his first game, he committed to University of Illinois, which is my alma mater. So I was happy to see that. But, I really think that he's going to do well for Chester Frazier and Brad Underwood. And, it was great to see them be able to get him to commit. He's a special player, and I'm excited to see him continue to grow and develop. I've seen him in the past, and I kind of had question marks on, what position was he. And Rashad Phillips helped to bring some understanding to that, right? Like, you don't have to look at people in the traditional sense of the 1 through 5. I think SENCIRE is just he's a scoring guard. He can do a lot of different things. He can open up the floor for other people. He finds the open man. He makes the right decisions, but he flat out plays his heart out on every possession. And I absolutely loved watching him play throughout the weekend. Another player for Wildcat Select who played on both of their teams, he played in the 15U and the 17U, was DARRYN Peterson, 2025. There's only 2 guys in the class of 2025 that, I'm not big on early rankings. I don't like to talk about 8th grade rankings. So I've seen those rankings. I've seen people say, hey, this player is the number 1 player in the class 2025. This player is the number 1 player in the class 2025. I don't care about any of that. We'll talk about that, when we're in, fall of 2023, and we'll start to talk about who's the number 1 player in 2025. But for me, there's 2 guys that have stood out head and shoulders above everybody else in the class 2025, and that's Koa Pete and DARRYN Peterson. Seeing DARRYN Peterson up close in person, he's every bit of 6'4", 6'5". He's got great build. He can compete at a high level. He competed, like I said, 15U and 17U. He has all the tools. I think that he's going to be an extremely special player. He has great poise. He can shoot it. He can put the ball on the floor. He can get to the basket. He plays above the rim. He's got great defensive intensity. He pressures the ball. Great lateral agility. He stays in front of his man. He could switch every position on the floor. I saw that from him a couple times in the 15U game that he played. It'll be interesting to see how that translates, as he continues to get older. But I think without a doubt, DARRYN Peterson is one of the best players in the country, and a name that we should keep our eyes on moving forward. He definitely impressed me, throughout the entire week when he came out and played. Isaac McNeely. I've seen games from Isaac where he's just really laid back. He doesn't have to take over the game. He's got SENCIRE next to him on one side. He's got DARRYN Peterson playing with him on another side sometimes. He's got Bowen Hardman knocking down threes on the side. That team has so many different weapons that Isaac doesn't have to come out and get his every single night. And I kind of questioned that. I questioned was he able to get a bucket when one is needed, and that was on me. I just hadn't seen enough, because he demonstrated that he can get a bucket at any time that he wants one. In the Strive for Greatness game, he came out and he was a big factor in that game. Game went to overtime. He knocked down 3 consecutive threes. He was chirping a little bit. He was talking. He was into it. You could tell that he's a competitor, and a fierce competitor at that. He has the ability to, in a heartbeat, just really take over a game. He can shoot it from deep. He shoots it very well. You can watch his rotation and his release. You can tell he spent quite a bit of time in the gym. University of Virginia has a special player coming to him, and I just liked everything that I saw from him throughout the course of the weekend. I'm excited to continue to see him some more. And one of the things that Rashad Phillips and I talked a lot about is who else, right? The complementary players. SENCIRE Harris went down early. I wouldn't say early. I take that back. He went down towards the end of the Wildcat Select game. And we talked a little bit about, hey, who's going to step up for Wildcat Select when they go against Strive for Greatness without SENCIRE Harris? And, Rashad Phillips called it. And that's why I think that he's so amazing. Like, he Yoda, right? But people always say, okay, he sees things before they happen, but he literally did. We had the conversation about KADEN Warner prior to the game. He said, KADEN's going to have to step up. KADEN's going to be a big factor in whether or not they can defeat Strive for Greatness, and that's exactly what happened. KADEN Warner showed his capabilities as a ball player and really impressed me in that game. He had 14 points, and he helped push them into that overtime session. And then obviously Isaac McNeely closed it out, but without KADEN Warner, I don't think they would have been there. So definitely somebody that stood out to me there. On the Strive for Greatness side, so much talent, top to bottom, guys ranked all up and down the ESPN top 100 rankings. I've had an opportunity to see Jaxon Kohler a couple times now. I saw him out at Pangos in Las Vegas, and when I saw him there, I knew he was special. His footwork is insane. The ability to play with his back to the basket, the ability to make things happen, to finish around the rim, all those things make him a true big. He does a lot of great things there. He dominates the offensive glass. He dominates the defensive glass. If you watch the film, every single rebound, he grabs it. He keeps it high. He fundamentally sound. He is exactly what you're looking for. If you're looking for, a big in the class of 2022, he's going to help you win. When the game flows through him, he can get you a bucket. He can get to the free throw line and convert. One of the things that he also does very well is he defends. He has the ability to switch against the high ball screen, which I really like to see from him. But beyond that, he can stretch the floor and he can knock down, mid-range twos and threes as well. So I think Jaxon Kohler is definitely, without a doubt, one of the best, big men in the class of 2022. He was extremely impressive. Again, this is, like I said, I've seen him a couple times. And each time that I've seen him, he's impressed me. And I think that, that just shows the consistency of who he is as a ball player. So I think without a doubt, he stood out quite a bit. Tre White, same thing. In the first couple games, I kind of, I saw the flashes. I said I definitely can see where they get the ranking from. I can see why he's being recruited so highly. He just really gets to the basket. He has such a quick first step. He finishes above the rim, finishes with both hands, finishes through contact. He did everything well. And at first, I was kind of questioning his ability to knock down the outside shot because he struggled a little bit shooting in the first game, but he made up for it with his ability to get to the basket and score or knock down free throws. So I saw that. But then in his game against All Ohio Red, he really showed that he could shoot the ball. He knocked down some deep threes, and he showed the different complexities of his game, the versatility that he brings to the table. I think that whoever gets him is going to be extremely happy with the player that they get. He's very versatile. He can guard multiple positions. He just brings so much to the table. He's a competitor. I really like Tre White a lot. Another player that stood out on that Strive for Greatness class, Mikey Price, class of 2023. He also scored well. He played very, very hard in that All-Ohio game. He stepped up. He showed what he's capable of doing. He showed his abilities there on the floor. I think that he's somebody that I'll keep an eye on here over the next year and a half, because I think that the sky's the limit for him, especially as he gets a little bit more of an active role. On that Strive for Greatness team, there's just so many guys, right? Between Jaxon Kohler, Shai Odoms, Tre White, Bronny James. So Mikey Price kind of finds his way and has to find his way in there. But I think that he's a special kid. I think that he's going to be extremely successful. I want to keep an eye on him as well as he continues to develop. And as I just mentioned, Bronny James. Bronny James, I really, really like his game. There's different points of his game that stand out to me, and aspects that, I talked about. We talked about a lot on the broadcast, and Rashad Phillips and I discussed it quite a bit. He shoots the ball well. I think that he's not quite aggressive enough right now, and I think that part of that is, the internal battle and the struggle that most point guards have of, trying to be a table setter and provide for everybody else and get everybody else involved versus understanding, hey, I've got to be more aggressive in attack. And when Bronny's in attack mode and being aggressive, he's an altogether different ball player. You saw that, in the game that he took to overtime. It's just, each game with him when on the floor, it goes down to the wire. We could talk about, the first game where, Midwest Basketball Club, Gabe Cupps took over, had a huge game, but Bronny was right there competing and battling, and it came down to a final shot. I just think that Bronny has a chance to be special. I think that It's tough because he gets the comparison to his dad a lot. But when I'm watching him, I see the fundamentally sound aspects of his game. I think he's an underrated passer. I think he's a very underrated defender. He stays in front of his man. He moves his feet. He does things the right way. He makes the right reads. I really like Bronny as a player, and I think the sky's the limit for him. You know, knowing he's coming off of an injury, knowing that high school basketball season just ended in California, I really think that he's one of those guys that is just going to continue to get better. His upside and his ceiling are so high. I think that he has everything that you need as far as from a development standpoint, right? Like all the resources in the world. So I think he's going to continue to get more and more athletic. He's stretching out. He's a legit 6'4" now. I think that he's going to be very special. I think that he's going to be a high-level collegiate basketball player, and it's going to be exciting to see where he goes from there and what that ceiling looks like long-term. But for right now, I'm going to compare him in that class of 2023 and talk about him as a 2023. And I do believe he's one of the best players in that class, and I'm excited to see him continue to develop. Josiah JoJo Harris. He stood out for me when I was watching the All-Ohio games. He 3-level scorer. He's committed to West Virginia. He gets to the basket, finishes around the rim. He has a great trajectory on his threes, knocks down, the outside shot. He's a competitor. He wants the ball in his hands. But he also isn't extremely, a lot of times the ball sticks when you see guys that have the level of talent that he has. You don't see the ball stick with Josiah. He tends to make the right reads. He tends to find the open man. It was interesting watching him play, watching him attack the glass. He showed me a couple different elements of his game that I hadn't seen in the past just because he didn't have to show them. But in that game against, particularly, in the game against Strive for Greatness, he showed, the defensive aptitude and the ability to defend against Jaxon Kohler, who, as I mentioned before, is a dominant big man. And we're talking, he probably was giving up 2.5 inches on Jaxon Kohler and quite a bit of size as well. But he came to play and he brought the intensity. So I definitely think West Virginia, Coach Huggins, he's getting a special player in Josiah Harris, got the early commitment. Josiah Harris is also a phenomenal student. He's already graduated with his associates. So, as a junior in high school, having your associate's degree, he's going to be in a strong position when he steps on the floor at West Virginia to not only be successful on the court, but be successful in the classroom as well. Sean Jones stood out to me as he always does. I think that he's one of the most explosive and dynamic guards in the class of 2022. I think that he's one of the most, if not the most explosive guard in Ohio in the class of 2022. He has a different gear. He gets to the basket and it's almost like he's being shot out of a rocket, and he finishes around the rim with both hands through contact. I saw, against Strive for Greatness, that was a little bit more difficult because of the size in the paint with Jaxon Kohler. And then Sean, he adjusted. He knocked down some outside shots. He knocked down the second level shot that Rashad Phillips and I talked about a lot. Just there's so many different, pieces to his game. There's so many things that he brings to the table. I really like Sean Jones, and I think that he's going to be successful wherever he chooses to play his collegiate basketball. A wild card. One of the names that if you're, a national basketball guy and you're watching a lot of, guys on that national high level, you haven't heard this name often or you haven't heard it at all. Michael BOVA, I absolutely love him as a player. I think that, a lot of times we look at guys and we only want to talk about ESPN Top 100 or, future high major guys. Michael BOVA is the definition of a glue guy. He's that guy that, if he's on your team, you're going to have a chance to win every single game because he's going to do whatever it takes to win. And he's not worried about who gets the credit. He's not worried about how many points he scores. But at one point in that All-Ohio game, in the first game, the one that they blew the doors out of, the Easy Street family, at one point, it was a close game. At one point, actually, All-Ohio was down, I think, by 9, and Michael BOVA came in off the bench and just injected instant offense. He had 10 points in the second quarter. He took charges. He had steals. He found the open man. He just plays the game the right way. Currently has an offer from Youngstown State. I think that he's a guy that really, really fits in that mid-major mold of glue guys, 4-year guys that before it's all said and done, going to be one of those guys that you talk about in the list of high scorers in school history. He's going to be a fan favorite, going to be a guy that you can build your program around. I really think that he's going to be extremely successful. So definitely one of my guys to watch, especially for you Midwest guys. Keep an eye on Michael Bova out of St. Ed's High School in Cleveland, Ohio. Talked a little bit about young guys, 2025. I'm one of those guys, when I start to hear those 2025, 2026, 2027, I don't even want to talk about them. But I really was impressed with BRAYDEN KYMAN. His size, his ability to stretch the floor. He shoots the ball very well. His older brother's currently playing at UCLA, so you can see the fabric within the DNA of high-level basketball player. He's somebody that I'm certainly going to keep my eye on moving forward. He stood out for Strive for Greatness. Every time he came in, you had to know where he was at and keep your eyes on him on the floor from a defensive standpoint because he can knock down the open shot, but he also can get in and battle in the post. He can grab rebounds on both ends of the floor. I think he's somebody that I definitely want to watch, and I think you should keep your eye on moving forward in that class of 2025. Carter Jackson for C2K Elite. I think that he's a special player. He did a lot. He scored at 3 levels. Again, a young player, and I'm excited to see him continue to grow and develop. He's playing with some great guys around him. He's got a lot of potential, a lot of upside. It's going to be interesting to see kind of where that goes. I watched quite a bit. He battled tooth and nail in that game against Strive for Greatness 15U, which again, some of the players on that side, between Victorious Miller, Malik Rasul, BRAYDEN KYMAN, there were a lot of players that have national attention and Division I scholarships, and C2K's 15U didn't back down. They came to play and they ended up winning that ball game, and a lot of that was because of Carter Jackson. Gabe Cupps. I absolutely love Gabe Cupps, and again, like I said, this was in the order of my notes, and I think because Midwest Basketball Club didn't play the final day, and that probably explains why he's lower down in this list of notes, because I was working on that day 3 and kind of working backwards. But Gabe Cupps is a phenomenal player, and the reason why I love Gabe Cupps so much is because there's not a selfish bone in his body. He has great production. He doesn't take a whole lot of shots, but when his team needs him to score, he's a flat out scorer. He understands how to play the game the right way. He's a coach's son, and you can tell it in everything that he does. As Rashad Phillips says, it's in his fabric. When you're recruiting a player as a point guard, you don't want to have to coach your point guard on how to play the game of basketball. You need him to be an extension of you on the floor. You need him to be a coach, if you will. And that's what Gabe Cupps is. He's going to take charges. He's going to find the open man. He's going to do everything that you need him to do in order to win. And then, hey, yeah, you need me to score? Okay, I'm going to give you 26 like you did against Strive for Greatness in game 1. I mean, just so many things that he brings to the table. I mean, his game too, but in the first game, in the game against Strive for Greatness, to close out the night of day 1 at the Battle Showcase. But so many things that Gabe Cupps brings to the table that impress me and show me the reason why he's being recruited so heavily. He does it all so well, and he doesn't care about the accolades and the stats. He's just playing basketball, and I absolutely love that. His running mate, Reed Sheppard, I've talked about him quite a bit on Twitter. If you're following me on social media, you know how high I am on Reed Sheppard. Same thing, very unselfish. Reed's one of those guys that, he has the ability to shoot it from the parking lot. You have to know where he's at when he crosses half court. I've read over and over again on different, platforms and different, things. Hubie Brown, for example, talks about, elite scorers, there's 3 zones, 3 scoring zones that Hubie Brown has. And all elite scorers will have one of those zones where they're not as efficient as they are in those other 2 zones. And as I shot chart Reed Sheppard, I see that it's close, right? Like all 3 of those zones, he scores well in. I see places where he scores a little bit more efficiently and effectively than others, but he scores in multiple ways, whether it be, that second level pull up mid range, whether it be finishing around the rim, whether it be, shooting and knocking down outside shots. And as Rashad Phillips says, even having that fourth level, ability to knock down the long range three. Reed Sheppard's a high major basketball player. I expect to see him climb greatly in the class of 2023, in my opinion, one of the top 50 players in that class, just in all of the guys that I've seen. But yes, without a doubt, I think that, between him and Gabe Cupps, you're going to have a lot of excitement from that Midwest Basketball Club team, not only in July this year, but the following year as 2023 guys, you're going to get a chance to see them again. And last, but certainly not least, again, Rashad Phillips talked a lot about the complementary players. And AJAY Sheldon, in his own right, I think on many other teams would be a first option. He would be a star, but he fills in and he fits perfect with this Midwest basketball team. He shoots it at a high clip. Over the course of the weekend, he was at above 70% from three, in double digits in all of their games. He's instant offense. He plays with an incredible amount of heart. He doesn't force anything. He shoots shots when he's open. When he's not open, he finds the open man, and he's credited a lot of times because they get it back to him because they share the ball so well. Rashad Phillips talked a lot about, the hockey assist that Midwest Basketball Club utilizes, and they just share the ball so well that, it doesn't matter whether it's Ben Sutherland, it doesn't matter, whether it's Rich Rolfe, it doesn't matter whether it's Reed Sheppard, doesn't matter whether it's Gabe Cupps, Mike Sheriff-Jance. I mean, there's so many weapons on that team and so many guys that can be successful with the ball in their hand, and they share it so well that you can't really say that, hey, this is the third best option, or this is you don't see that with Midwest Basketball Club. That they're just a full-on program, not just a team. They're a program. AJAY Sheldon's that guy that I'd say is kind of that complementary piece that helps them to really push the needle and turn the corner, and play winning basketball. So AJAY Sheldon's one of those guys that I'd like to see his recruitment kind of pick up a little bit, and I think that it will during this July live period as guys get a chance to see him more. But definitely he was somebody that stood out to me. So didn't want to be too long-winded and do a deep dive on every single player that I saw at the Battle Showcase. Again, it was an amazing showcase. Hats off to the staff from the Battle. They put together an amazing event. They got together some top-notch teams, and they did it relatively quickly as far as organizing everything due to the state of California just finishing playing. Due to waiting on COVID restrictions and things like that. So hats off to them. Hats off to SUV TV for allowing me another opportunity to do what I love, which is broadcast basketball games, evaluate players, get my eye on some guys. So make sure you're following the Battle US at the Battle US on Twitter. Find their socials, make sure you're following them, staying up on them, because I'm sure they're going to have plenty of high-level events moving forward. Make sure you're following SUV TV on all of your social media platforms, including YouTube. And I'd be remiss if I didn't plug myself as well. Find me on Twitter at Justin W. Brantley. Let me know what you think about some of the analysis that I've given you, some of the recaps that I'm giving you. If you're following me, I'm not one of those guys that takes offense to calling me out or saying hey, I don't quite agree with your take on this. We can have great back and forth dialogue on players. Feel free to my DMs are always open. We can talk basketball at any time. Make sure you're following me. You're subscribed on YouTube, because I'm going to do a lot more of these deep dives, a lot more daily huddles. I'm excited to bring more content your way. I think that there's a lot of great things happening in the grassroots basketball space, and I'm blessed to have the opportunity to be around it. So thanks again. I look forward to talking to you guys soon.